The inside of the M18 Hellcat smelled like hot metal, oil, sweat, and fear. Frost covered the edges of the open turret as freezing wind pushed through the Ardennes forest before dawn. Somewhere beyond the dark tree line, engines growled through the snow. Heavy engines. German engines. The men inside the Hellcat stopped talking the moment they heard them. Even before the radios confirmed movement on the road ahead, they already knew what was coming. Panthers. Maybe several of them. Maybe an entire column.
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.
And inside the thin-skinned American tank destroyer, nobody pretended they were safe. One direct hit from a Panther 75 MIM gun could rip straight through the Hellcat like paper. December 19, 1944. Near the village of Noville, north of Bastogne, Belgium, the Battle of the Bulge was exploding across the Ardennes. German armored forces were smashing through American lines in a desperate attempt to split the Allied armies and capture Antwerp. Snow covered the roads. Fuel was low on both sides. Visibility changed by the minute as fog drifted through forests and frozen fields. And somewhere in that white darkness, one American Hellcat crew was about to fight a battle that German tankers would remember with shock and anger for the rest of the war. Staff Sergeant Bill Kirby sat half-exposed in the open turret of his M18 Hellcat, scanning the road through binoculars with numb fingers. He was 24 years old, from Ohio, and had already seen enough dead men in Europe to stop reacting to the smell of burned flesh. Beside him, Gunner Corporal Frank Delaney adjusted the sight on the 76 Murray cannon, while loader Eddie Morales stacked armor-piercing rounds within easy reach. Driver Tommy Weaver waited below inside the hull, gripping the controls tightly, while assistant driver Ray Coleman listened to radio chatter through static-filled headphones. Nobody inside the Hellcat said what all of them were thinking. Panthers were dangerous even in perfect conditions. Their sloped armor could bounce American rounds at long range, and their high-velocity guns could destroy Sherman tanks from terrifying distances. German crews respected Panthers. American tankers feared them. But the M18 Hellcat had one thing the Panther did not: speed. Pure speed. The Hellcat was the fastest armored vehicle of the war. On open roads it could reach nearly 55 miles per hour. Its armor was thin enough to be penetrated by machine gun fire in some places, but American tank destroyer doctrine never intended the Hellcat to trade blows head-on. It was designed to move fast, strike hard, and disappear before the enemy could react. Against Panthers, that speed might be the only reason its crews stayed alive. A crackling radio message broke the silence. German armor advancing south. Multiple tanks confirmed. Kirby lowered the binoculars slowly. Through the fog, he could finally hear the tracks clearly now. Steel crushing frozen mud. Trees trembling as heavy machines pushed forward. The Germans were close. Delaney looked up from the gun sight. How many? Kirby kept staring into the fog. Enough. The road ahead curved between snow-covered trees before opening into a shallow clearing. American engineers had already studied the terrain during the night. The crossroads created a natural funnel. German tanks moving too quickly through the bend would expose their side armor for only a few seconds before entering the clearing. That tiny moment was all the Hellcat needed. If the first shot missed, they were dead. Kirby checked his watch. Just after 6 a.m. Dawn still had not fully broken through the clouds. The freezing air burned inside their lungs. Somewhere nearby, artillery thunder rolled across the Ardennes like distant earthquakes. Then the first Panther appeared. Its massive silhouette emerged from the fog slowly, dark and almost unreal. Snow clung to its tracks. Branches scraped along its sides. Behind it came another Panther. Then another, at least 9 tanks moving in staggered formation down the road with confidence that bordered on arrogance. German tank crews had reasons to feel superior in late 1944. Panthers had devastated Allied armor in Normandy months earlier. Many German commanders believed American tank destroyers were weak machines crewed by inexperienced soldiers. The Hellcat especially looked fragile compared to a Panther. Its open turret and light armor made it appear almost suicidal on a battlefield dominated by heavy guns. Some German crews reportedly joked that Hellcats were fast coffins. Kirby waited. Not yet. The lead Panther rolled closer to the clearing. Its turret remained forward, searching the road ahead instead of the woods to the left, where the Hellcat sat hidden beneath branches and camouflage netting. Closer. The men inside the Hellcat barely breathed. Closer. Fire. The Hellcat's 76 memory gun exploded with a deafening blast that shook the frozen trees around them. The armor-piercing round slammed into the side of the lead Panther just behind the turret ring. Sparks erupted instantly. Then flames burst from the tank in a violent flash. The German column stopped in confusion. Before the enemy crews could react, Delaney already had the gun back on target. Up, loader Eddie Morales shoved another round into the breach. Fire. The second shot smashed into another Panther farther back in the line. Smoke burst from its engine deck. German tankers scrambled to rotate their turrets toward the forest, but they still could not clearly identify where the shots were coming from. "Move," Kirby shouted. Driver Tommy Weaver slammed the Hellcat into reverse. Snow sprayed behind them as the vehicle backed deeper into the woods at shocking speed. Branches snapped against the hull while German shells blasted into the area they had occupied seconds earlier. The forest exploded with dirt, ice, and shattered trees. "Keep moving." The Hellcat raced through a narrow path between pines before circling toward another firing position that American scouts had prepared during the night. That was the secret. The Hellcat never stayed still long enough for Panthers to target it accurately. Inside the German column, confusion spread rapidly. Panther crews were trained for aggressive armored warfare. Their tanks dominated open combat, but the Ardennes forests restricted movement and visibility. Roads became deadly choke points. One hidden enemy could stall an entire advance. Kirby's Hellcat reached the second position overlooking the road from another angle. Through gaps in the trees, he saw German crews dismounting near the disabled Panthers. Officers waved frantically while tank commanders searched for the American gun position. Then another Panther exposed its side armor while attempting to maneuver around the burning wreck ahead. "Target left tank," Kirby ordered. Delaney adjusted slightly. Fire. The round punched through the Panther's hull. Flames erupted immediately. Black smoke climbed into the freezing morning air. 3 Panthers hit. Now the Germans understood this was not random resistance. Somebody was hunting them deliberately. A German shell screamed over the Hellcat and detonated behind them. Another struck nearby trees, spraying splinters through the open turret. Eddie Morales felt wood fragments cut across his cheek. "They're ranging us." Delaney shouted. Kirby nodded. "Move again." The Hellcat accelerated through the woods once more. Its powerful engine roared while snow and mud flew behind the tracks. This was the advantage German crews underestimated. Panthers were deadly, but they were heavy. Slow to reposition, difficult to maneuver through tight forest terrain. The Hellcat moved like a predator darting between shadows. Still, every move risked disaster. One lucky German shell could end everything instantly. As they repositioned, Kirby spotted American infantry retreating through the woods nearby. Exhausted paratroopers from the 101st Airborne Division stumbled through snow carrying bazookas and rifles. Some paused to watch the Hellcat racing past them. One soldier shouted, Get those bastards!" Kirby never answered. His attention stayed on the road. The German column had partially spread out now. Panthers attempted to cover different angles while infantry moved cautiously into the trees. The Germans wanted to flush out the hidden American tank destroyers before continuing south toward Bastogne, but they still did not realize there was only one Hellcat hitting them repeatedly from changing positions. That illusion became the deadliest weapon of all. At the third firing point, Delaney steadied the gun again. Through the sight, he could see German tank commanders shouting from open hatches. One Panther rotated its turret slowly toward another patch of forest, expecting the next attack there. Wrong direction. Fire. The 76 memory shell slammed through the rear side armor of the Panther. The explosion inside blew flames from the commander's hatch instantly, 4 Panthers burning. Inside the Hellcat, adrenaline replaced fear now. The crew moved automatically. Load, aim, fire, relocate, repeat. Their training had become instinct. But German crews were adapting too. A Panther farther back in the column suddenly fired blindly into the woods. The shell detonated terrifyingly close to the Hellcat's position. Dirt and snow rained into the open turret. Tommy Weaver yelled from below, "That was too damn close." Kirby knew they could not keep this up forever. Ammunition was limited, fuel was limited, and eventually the Germans would pinpoint them. Then came the worst moment yet. As the Hellcat repositioned again through a narrow wooded trail, a Panther suddenly appeared ahead between the trees at less than 100 yards. Both crews froze for half a second. The German tank commander stared directly at the American vehicle in disbelief. At that distance, the Panther's gun could destroy them instantly. Gun front. Kirby screamed. Delaney swung the cannon desperately while the Panther turret began rotating toward them. Whoever fired first would survive. Eddie Morales slammed around into the breach so hard his hands bled. Up. Fire. The Hellcat's gun blasted at point-blank range. The armor-piercing round punched into the Panther's lower side hull just as the German tank fired. Both guns erupted almost together. The Panther shell screamed past the Hellcat by inches and exploded somewhere behind them. The American crew barely heard it, all eyes locked on the German tank ahead. For one terrible second, nothing happened. Then flames burst violently from the Panther's engine compartment. The German crew began climbing from hatches as smoke poured upward. 5 Panthers destroyed. Tommy Weaver laughed uncontrollably for 3 seconds before realizing his hands were shaking too hard to hold the controls steady. Kirby grabbed his shoulder. Stay focused. The battle was becoming chaotic now. German infantry spread through the forest searching for the American vehicle, while surviving Panthers fired into tree lines from multiple directions. Every minute increased the chance of disaster, yet the Hellcat kept moving. That speed became almost supernatural to exhausted German crews. The Americans seemed everywhere at once. One moment, shells came from the left. Minutes later, another Panther exploded from shots fired behind them. The narrow roads and fog amplified the confusion. A German officer later described Ardennes combat as fighting ghosts among frozen trees. Around 7:10 a.m., the Hellcat reached another prepared ambush point overlooking a slight downhill stretch of road. Kirby counted at least 4 operational Panthers remaining, still too many. Delaney wiped sweat from his face despite the freezing cold. "How much ammo left?" "Not enough," Morales answered quietly. Kirby studied the road carefully. The surviving German tanks moved slower now, more cautious. Their confidence was gone. Turrets scanned constantly. Infantry advanced ahead, checking the woods. The hunters had become nervous prey. Then opportunity appeared again. One Panther moved slightly ahead of the others while attempting to bypass wrecked tanks clogging the road. its side armor exposed briefly between two snow-covered trees. "Take it." The Hellcat fired. Direct hit. The Panther erupted in smoke. 6 destroyed. German return fire hammered the forest instantly. Shells ripped apart trees around the Hellcat. One explosion knocked Delaney sideways against the turret wall. "Move, move, move." The Hellcat accelerated again, engine roaring like an animal through the woods. Behind them, German commanders were furious. Reports flooded over radios describing hidden American armor striking from impossible angles. Some crews believed they were facing multiple tank destroyer platoons, but it was still the same Hellcat crew. Same men, same gun. By now, the psychological effect mattered almost as much as the physical destruction. German momentum had slowed dramatically. Every burning Panther blocked roads and reduced visibility further. Smoke mixed with fog until the battlefield became a gray nightmare filled with echoes of engines and sudden gunfire. Kirby checked his watch again. Time felt distorted inside combat. Minutes stretched endlessly. Another radio transmission crackled through static. American forces nearby were attempting to regroup. Reinforcements might arrive later, but for now the Hellcat crew remained dangerously isolated. Then the Germans nearly ended everything. As the Hellcat crossed a narrow opening between tree lines, a hidden Panther fired suddenly from the right flank. The shell struck the ground beside the vehicle with devastating force. The blast lifted part of the Hellcat off the frozen earth. Inside the turret, Eddie Morales slammed backward violently. Shrapnel tore through radio equipment. Tommy Weaver lost control momentarily as smoke and dirt filled the fighting compartment. For several seconds, nobody knew if they were alive. Kirby tasted blood in his mouth. "Report." Delaney coughed hard. "Gun still works." Tommy shouted from below, "Track's okay," but assistant driver Ray Coleman did not answer immediately. Kirby looked down and saw blood running along Coleman's sleeve where shrapnel had sliced through his arm. Still alive. Barely. "We're leaving," Tommy said. Kirby shook his head instantly. Not yet. Another German shell crashed through nearby trees. They had been spotted. The Hellcat reversed hard behind a ridge while branches collapsed around them. The crew breathed heavily in smoke-filled air. Ray Coleman gritted his teeth while wrapping cloth around his wound. "I'm fine." Nobody believed him. Kirby peered carefully through binoculars again. The Germans were advancing cautiously now, expecting the damaged American vehicle to retreat. Instead, Kirby made a decision that changed the battle. He ordered Tommy to swing wide through deeper forest terrain toward an elevated ridge farther east. It was risky, the path was rough and partially blocked by snowdrifts, but if they reached the ridge, they could fire directly onto the Panthers from above. The Hellcat bounced violently through frozen ground while tree branches scraped across the hull. Several times it nearly became stuck. Every second felt dangerous. Then suddenly the forest opened. Below them, German Panthers crawled slowly along the road beneath the ridge, focused entirely on the wrong direction. Kirby almost smiled. Perfect. Delaney lined up the first shot carefully. Fire. The shell plunged downward into the topside armor of a Panther. The tank exploded almost immediately. 7 destroyed. Panic spread through the German column. Turrets rotated wildly while commanders searched the ridgeline in disbelief. Before they could respond, the Hellcat fired again. Another direct hit. 8 Panthers destroyed. German machine guns sprayed the ridge blindly now. Shells tore through trees around the American position. The Hellcat rocked from nearby impacts. Last hap round. Morales shouted. 1 Panther remained operational below. Its turret finally located the Hellcat's position and began turning upward. Kirby could almost feel time slowing down. The German gun barrel rotated toward them inch by inch. Delaney adjusted aim carefully despite shaking hands. Fire! The final armor-piercing shell screamed across the freezing air and struck the Panther near the turret base. For a moment the tank remained still. Then smoke poured from every hatch. 9 Panthers knocked out. The surviving German infantry scattered into cover while the road below burned with wrecked armor. Thick black smoke climbed into the white Ardennes sky. Inside the Hellcat, nobody celebrated. They were too exhausted even to speak. The crew simply stared at the destruction below them, trying to process what had happened. 9 Panthers. Destroyed by one fast American tank destroyer crew using movement, terrain, surprise, and relentless aggression. But the battle itself was far from over. German artillery soon began pounding the ridge. The Hellcat finally withdrew through the forest with damaged radios, wounded crewmen, and almost no ammunition remaining. Behind them, the shattered German advance slowed long enough for American defenses near Bastogne to strengthen. That mattered enormously. The Battle of the Bulge depended heavily on speed. German armored columns needed rapid breakthroughs before Allied forces could reorganize. Every delay became dangerous. Every destroyed tank became harder to replace. Fuel shortages already haunted German commanders by late 1944. The loss of multiple Panthers in one localized ambush represented more than destroyed machines. It damaged momentum, confidence, timing. And for German crews who survived, the psychological impact lasted long afterward. Many German tankers entered the Ardennes campaign believing American armor was inferior. Technically, in several ways, the Panther was indeed superior to many Allied tanks in armor and firepower. But battles were not decided by armor thickness alone. Mobility mattered. Positioning mattered. Crew coordination mattered. And in the forests of the Ardennes, speed could become more deadly than steel. The M18 Hellcat proved exactly that. Its crews understood they could not survive traditional tank duels against Panthers. So they avoided fighting like conventional tanks. Instead, they turned the battlefield into a moving ambush. Strike first. Relocate instantly. Never stay predictable. German crews trained for domination found themselves chasing shadows instead. Years later, veterans from both sides would still describe Ardennes combat as some of the most terrifying fighting of the entire war. Snow-muffled sounds strangely. Fog distorted distances. Burning vehicles lit forests with orange fire against endless white ground. Men froze beside wrecked machines while artillery echoed across valleys day and night. And inside that frozen chaos, small actions by individual crews sometimes changed entire sectors of the battlefield. The Hellcat crew under Staff Sergeant Kirby never became globally famous. No Hollywood movie turned them into legends. Yet their style of combat represented something important about the American response during the Battle of the Bulge: adaptation. German commanders expected panic and collapse when their offensive began on December 16, 1944. In many places, American units were surprised badly. Roads filled with retreating soldiers, entire positions were overrun. But again and again, small groups resisted stubbornly in forests, villages, and crossroads across Belgium and Luxembourg. Tank destroyer crews, paratroopers, engineers, artillery observers, and ordinary infantrymen created delays that slowly weakened the German advance. Near Bastogne especially, those delays became critical. The Hellcat itself remained one of the most fascinating armored vehicles of World War II. It looked almost fragile compared to heavy German armor, yet its speed shocked even Allied soldiers seeing it for the first time. Crews often described driving it like controlling a race car with a cannon attached. That speed demanded courage, too. Open-turret combat exposed crews to artillery fragments, sniper fire, weather, and explosions. Thin armor meant mistakes usually became fatal. Hellcat crews survived through awareness and aggression, not protection. Kirby's crew understood that truth completely by December 1944. When they finally reached American lines later that morning, medics treated Ray Coleman's wound while mechanics inspected damage across the vehicle. Snow melted slowly against the Hellcat's warm engine compartment as exhausted soldiers gathered nearby asking the same question over and over. "How many did you get?" Nobody answered immediately. The crew looked at one another first. They had entered the forest before dawn believing they might never come back out alive. They had faced panthers at point-blank range. They had watched shells rip apart trees around them. They had nearly died multiple times in less than 2 hours. Finally, Delaney spoke quietly. Enough. Across the frozen Ardennes, the war continued burning forward. German offensives pushed west. American reinforcements rushed north. Thousands more men would die before the Battle of the Bulge finally ended in January 1945. But along one forest road near Bastogne, blackened Panther wrecks remained frozen in the snow as proof that even the most feared armor in Europe could become vulnerable when arrogance met speed, patience, and deadly precision. The German tankers had laughed at the M18 Hellcat, until the forest started firing back.
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.